Hello, in this material we will make a quick review of the most basic functionalities within Excel. Of course, all of those information that we will revise now you can also find in those Word document that I've sent you before. First, I will create a new Word document on my desktop and just open the document. As we know, each sheet in Excel comprises of different sheets, and each sheet in Excel comprises of columns and rows. Excel can be used to different kind of calculations, creating charts and so on. It is especially useful because Excel has a lot of built-in functions, mathematical functions, statistical, logical functions and so on. And you can make some quite interesting analysis of different kind of data using Excel. So for this purpose, first I will create a simple table and just go through the basic functionalities within Excel. So I will just create a basic table. In the first three columns I will add headers of my table, let's say product, price, and date. I will make this a little bit bolder. And when I select those cells, we see that we have a similar tab, similar to what we have in Word, for example, which allow me to change the formatting, which is changing the font size, changing the font type, changing the background, and so on. I will make this font bolder. I will add yellow background to the header. And in the next tab, in the alignment section, I would also like to center the headers of my table. Then I will use the border option in here to make and choose the all borders option just to make this table stand out a little bit more visually. Now every time you can also resize each column if you expect the data to take up more space, and the same thing vertically, you can also change the size. Then you can also use this option in here to center the text horizontally and vertically using those options. Now, next thing, I would like to add a few records with different types of data. So I will just add a few elements. As we see, if the text within a cell goes out and is longer than the width of the column, it will just span outside of the cell. I will make this a little bit bigger and also choose the option called wrap text to wrap the text so it always tries to fit the available space. Now I will add a few more elements. And now, each cell within Excel can be identified by an address. It means that each cell can be represented by a letter and a number. So for example, milk is now in cell B4. Always start with the letter, then a number. So each cell can be identified using those two information, column and row. Now in the price column I will add a few numbers. I will just add a few elements. The separator of the can be different based on your regional settings in Windows. In my case, I'm using the comma. Now, first thing, when it comes to Excel, when we specify the data within a column, we should always make sure that we choose a proper data type. When it comes to text, there is usually by default Excel will try to choose a specific data type. Usually he will do it pretty well. But for example, in the case of price, I would like to format the data to be displayed with the currency symbol. So I can just select this whole column, right click and choose Format Cells, and in the Format Cells, from the Format Cells window, we have a different categories of data. For example, we have a number. We can specify how many decimal places we would like to see. We have the currency. We can select the currency and the decimal places, accounting, date, time, percentage, and a few more. If I will choose the currency with 2 decimal places, we see now that each price is formatted as a currency with the currency symbol. What is good about this is that I can still do calculations, and this currency symbol won't interfere with my calculation. So I can still, if I select the cell, we see in the upper window that a value within the cell is still just a number. So this will be pretty important later on. In the date section, I will just write the date in my current default format. Now this is now added. I will just add a few more dates in the future, let's say. Just to have something to work with. Now, usually Excel will try to format the data based on what we are typing in. Usually he will do it correctly, but we should always make sure. So for example, in the case of those data, those rows, I would like to make sure that Excel formatted this data as a date. I will just right click, I can choose Format Cells. We see that he selected the date, and also we can select the type of data within the cell, the data type, by choosing the number option in Excel in here, and I can also choose the number format from here. This is the same thing as going right click and choosing this from this menu. Now what next? In Excel, the most important thing is being able to do different types of calculations using functions and addresses of specific cells. So in this case, if I would like to, let's say, count the sum of all of the prices in the next cell, in my case G10, I would like to input type in an expression. In Excel, expression is something which will be calculated, and the result will be visible in our cell. We always start expression with an equal sign, and then in my case the name of the address of the cell. So in this case, let's say that I would like to sum those prices together. I will choose C, name of the letter, then 4 plus C5 plus C6 plus C7 plus C8. As we see, I have a lot of typing. I can also use lowercase letter. There is no difference. And press enter. Now we see that the result is 7,320. So this is the result of summing those cells together. Now, what is nice about this is when I select this cell, we see in the window in here formula bar, we can still see our formula that was the base of this calculation. And what is nice is that if I will change the values in here, then we see that every time I change something, this sum is being recalculated. So Excel tries to keep these calculations according to the data that was the base of those calculations. So this is why this is different than, for example, in the other cell, I could just sum those numbers together myself. So I could just type an equal sign, 120 plus 2,200 plus, and so on. And I would get the same result, but because in the cell below I was using those cells, now I can recalculate those values at any time. Now, instead of just doing this like this, because I have a lot of typing, and of course instead of plus I can use minus, I can use the multiply symbol, division symbol, and also I can use braces to change the order of the calculations. So I can use those symbols. Now, instead of just doing this manually, of course usually in Excel I will have a lot more, like thousands or hundreds of different rows, I can use a built-in function. I will get back to this cell and just remove this previous formula, and now I will use the function. In Excel, I can use the function by either selecting it from the FX option in here, just click it and I can choose the function from one of the categories in here, or I can just use the name of the function if I remember it. So in my case, I want to use the function called sum, and now this function can be used similar to a method in Java. So I use the name of the function, brackets, and now parameters. First, I will start with the first cell, C4, 2 dots, and the last cell, which is C10, and close the bracket. Now we see that when I press enter, I got the same result back, but actually, when it comes to the sum function, I just specify 2 cells, the first and the last, and then as we see in here, it is already highlighted by this blue border, that this whole range was selected. I didn't have to basically put all of those cells and sum them together myself. So this is a much shorter way of writing. And of course, this function still works similarly, so if I will change any kind of calculations, any kind of data in here, the value is recalculated. Some other basic functions which are very useful is, for example, minimum, which is simply min, and the same parameter, C4 to C10. I will get the minimum, the lowest price, the maximum, which is pretty much the same, and also what else? We have also average. So I can type an equal sign, average, from C4 to C10, and this is the average price. And each time I will change the price, the value get recalculated. Now, there are much more different types of functions in Excel. Of course, we won't go through all of them, but the important thing is that we have the basic functions. We can also nest functions together, so you can actually add the results of different functions, or maybe as a parameter of one function, you can nest another function. So you can nest them together. Now, let's say that I will here insert a new column. I will just click the D column header, right click and choose insert. So I just inserted a new column. Now, I will call this column expensive, and let's say that I would like to display in this cell the word yes or no depending on the value of the price. If the price is higher than 200, I would like to display with the word yes, that it is expensive. If not, I would like to display the word no. Well, of course, I could just do it manually, but of course, I don't want to do it this way. I want to use a function. In this case, in the case of expensive cell, I will select first one, which is D4. I will start with an equal sign, and I will type the function called if. So just like if in programming language. A function if accepts 3 parameters. The first one if is the logical test. So if the value of C4 in my case is greater than 200, then I'm using the semicolon and passing another parameter, the word yes. And if this is not true, then I will display the word no. So it kind of looks like a ternary function in Java. Just click yes. Okay, and we see that I got no. Now this is true, 120 is not higher than 200, but maybe if I will change it to 220, oh, we see that it gets updated. So, well, I would like to use the same expression in all of those cells before, but of course each time I would like to change the address of C4 to C5, C6, and so on. I could just copy this, but of course I don't want to change this address space manually. In Excel, what is very important is that I can select this cell and choose this black square in the bottom right corner of this cell. You see when I hover over it, my cursor is changed to black square, black cross. And now I will just click it and drag it down and release the button. Now we see that I got different values. Now let's check the expression in those cells. We see that in the D5, my expression is almost the same, but C4 was changed to C5. In the next one, C5 was changed to C6, and so on and so on. We see that Excel actually intelligently copied this expression and incremented the value of my cell by 1. So each of those expressions actually corresponds to the proper cell. So we see that those values which are higher than 200 have the word yes, the ones that are low have the word no. And if I will change it, then it still works. So this is a way how we can copy a lot of an expression in Excel intelligently by using this black square and dragging it usually down or horizontally. Depending on the direction of this copying, usually when we copy something down, we see that what is changing in our case is the value of the number of the row, so the row will be changed. If I would drag it down horizontally like this, I will just do it for a second, we see that each time in each expression the value of the letter is changed. So I have F, G, H. Of course in this case it doesn't make sense, but if I will copy this horizontally, this is the result I will get. Now let's change this expression a little bit. Let's say that instead of just having this 200, this constant value in my expression, I would like to extract it to a different cell. So minimum price 200, and I would like to use this 200 in my expression. So I will get back to D4 and change 200 to H5. Enter. There is no change. I will just copy this expression again, and we have a problem basically. We have a problem because in this case 30 I got yes, which is not true. And this is because now my value 200 comes from the cell H5. We see that when I copied intelligently this expression below, the problem is that Excel also is changing the value of the row number for the column H, which means that, as we see, he's trying to take the value from different types of cell, which has nothing to do with the value I'm interested in. So in Excel, which is very important, what I can do to solve this problem, before my number 5, I can type a $sign and just press enter. Nothing really changed. I will just copy this expression again down, and now the result is correct. And this is because whenever you want to froze basically the address or part of the address of our expression of our cell, in this case I would like to froze the 5 so it won't be changed when I'm copying this expression, I can use the $sign before. So we see that now H5 is not changed. If I would put the $sign before the letter, then if we would copy this horizontally, the letter wouldn't be changed. Yeah? So this is how I can, as we see, he's always taking the value from this single column which we have in here. So this is how we can use those $signs. So what is important in this case, always remember how to use an expression using the addresses and how you can use the logical function and so on. Well, now we can also make this conditional in here more complex, because we have also a function called AND, which is a logical function, and actually can have two logical expression or more. So I will type something like this, which is the same expression, and then I will put another logical condition. Let's say that D5 divided by 2 has to be greater than 10. Oh, we got some problem. I will just try to do it again. Let's say D5 D6 is higher than 200, and this is inside my AND function, and D6 is lower than 300. And now we see that only if the value of D6 will be between 200 and 300, we will print yes, otherwise we'll print no. Because I have to nest the AND function inside the if. We don't have anything like AND keyword or ampersand in Java. We have to use a separate function for it. So this time I'm nesting two functions together. Of course, we have also function called OR, if you would like to use it. I will just copy this down, so I have the correct expression again back. back again. So those are the kind of basics when we are dealing with sheet, with expressions and so on. There are much more different kinds of expression, but of course we won't be talking about them now. What I would like to also say, let's say that a last thing which may be useful is if I would like to have some common header for this whole table, I can use merge and center option and create the main header for this whole column. Merge and center, as we saw, I can just select a few cells and just merge them into a single cell. If I will select this cell again and click merge and center again, the cell will be also splitted back again into separate cells. Now the next thing which we would like to use is to show conditional formatting. For this purpose I will use a little larger table. I will create another sheet just by clicking this plus symbol and just go through other options in Excel. On the Insert tab we can create different types of charts. Also we can create a table and pivot table. We will get back to this in a second. On the page layout I can change the things mostly related to the visual style of my sheet whenever I want it to be printed. Yeah? So sizes, margins, orientation and so on. Formulas, basically in here we can see the categories of different functions. So basically those are the same functions that we can use using our formula bar and FX symbol. Now data, in here we can work with data from different sources like external databases, MS Access database, data warehouses or CSV file and so on, and we will work with this in a second. Now review allows us to spell check our document, view, change the zooming and change some helper kind of visual things related to our sheet, so like grids, headings and so on. We can, as we see, hide and show headings and so on. Add-ins are custom scripts. Help and team, nothing that we'll be working with, because team is mostly used in larger companies, enterprise type companies. I will get back to first before I will continue. I will get back to my first sheet and I will just create a simple chart just to see how it works. In Excel I can just select the data I'm interested in. Let's say that it will be products and prices. I can select one of the charts, let's say the first one, and this way I can very easily generate some visual representation of the selected data. What is nice is that whenever I'm changing, I will just make this on the same screen for a second. Whenever I'm changing the data, just like the expressions, we see that our chart is updated automatically, so we don't have to worry about updating it ourselves. Always the chart tries to stay up to date with the data. Now we can of course change different types of options of this chart. If I will just select it and go to the design tab, I can change the visual style of this chart. I can also change things related to data, to if the axes are showing or not, and so on and so on. We can customize this however we want. Now I will now get back to sheet 2. Now in this case I would like to import the data from a separate source, and I would like to use the CSV file. CSV file is in here, autosalon.csv. I will just open it in Notepad just to show it how it looks. As we see, this is just a data which is represented by a text. In the first column, if the first row I have the name of the table, in the next one I have the headers for my columns, and in the next rows I have different types of data. So in this case there are data about cars. Each column is separated by a semicolon. So this kind of format of data is very convenient to use whenever we want to read in the data using some kind of programming language. We can just use this comma, this semicolon as a separator for all of the columns. Now I will import this data to Excel. For this purpose I will go to a Data tab and choose from Text or CSV option, and I will select the autosalon.csv file. So I will go to desktop, AutoSalon, import. Excel is really good when working with different types of sources, different types of data. In this case, we see that he already detected that the delimiter is a semicolon. I can change it if I want. We see that he already gave me the kind of a preview of how the data will look like. I can change the encoding if I want to. I will just leave it as default, and actually I will just click load, and the data will be imported into separate columns and rows. We'll wait for a second. Now he already added my data. As we see, he created the table, which is also kind of visually standing out because each row has a different color, so it is a little bit easier to analyze. And also at the top I have columns which have those buttons which allow me to sort my data and to also filter my data. Now we see that the problem is that he kind of is treating the name of the columns as a data. So for this purpose I will just select this whole table for a second. Just to fix it, I will go to a design and choose convert to range for a second and click OK. Now I removed the table styling from this table, so we don't have those buttons anymore, and I will just remove this first row just so I have the table which looks like this. Now I would like to add again the ability to filter the data, so I will just select the second row with the names of the columns, select the whole table and go to Insert tab, select a table. Now this is true that my table has headers, so I'll just leave this option and click OK, and now I have my table back again, and we see that also the column names are fixed, so whenever I scroll they always stays at the top, which is convenient. And now let's say that we would like to filter some of the data. Let's say that I'm only interested in the cars which are from Seat or Toyota, so on the mark I will just click this button and select only Daewoo and Fiat, click OK, and we see that now the data is filtered. Well, the data which was hidden is not removed, it is just hidden, so we can always get back. I can also click the engine capacity and, for example, sort according to this column, starting from the lowest engine capacity and finishing with the highest. So I can also sort the data. And I can also add the text filter myself, things like contains and so on, so I can either pre-select the values which I'm interested in, or I can just create my own filter. I can always click the filter again and remove the filter from the data by clicking the clear filter button, and now I have all of the rows back again available for me. So this is how we can work. I will just sort it maybe in different order, and so on and so on. So we see that this gives us a very convenient way to quickly read in data from the CSV file and just analyze it. Then I can just very quickly create some charts for this data and so on. This formatting is called table formatting because each table has those columns which allow me to filter and edit and filter and sort my data. Now we will do a different types of styling. For this purpose I will again select my table and convert it to range. Convert to range means that I'm basically removing the table formatting and my data is becoming just a raw text data in cells and columns. So I will just go to design and again click convert to range, and I just remove this table formatting. Now I will select this table again and choose a different type of formatting, which is called a pivot table. For this purpose I will again go to the Insert tab, and now I will choose the pivot table. I will just click it once. I will just leave the default options, click OK, and now we see that we have a new sheet 4, and we see that we got this window called pivot table 1. Now on the right you should have a list of all the columns we had in our report, so ID, mark, type, engine capacity and so on, and 4 fields: filters, columns, rows and values. Now what I can do now is I can actually drag those columns down, and basically I can decide how I want this data this report to look like. I can just dynamically generate a report. Now I will just drag the ID into the values section. Now I will drag the mark into the rows section, and we see that I very quickly created a report which shows me how many cars there are of different mark. How many cars there are from different marks. So we have 1 Seat, 1 Skoda, 4 Toyotas, and so on. I can also drag the year of the production, let's say, and drag it to the row section over the mark. So now I can see within each year what mark of car was produced. I can maybe change this order of those columns by just dragging mark above the year of production. I have something of different types. I have the mark and the years in which this mark was produced. Maybe I will do something different and drag the year of production into the columns section. And now we see that I got this nice matrix which shows me during which year which mark was produced. So I can just very easily kind of create a report which suits exactly my needs. And we also got those total summaries automatically counted by Excel. If you would like to change the function which is being used, because in this case he's just counting, you can just click in the values section and choose value field setting. You can change him to maybe sum values together, count the average, count the minimum, maximum, and so on, depending on what you would like to see in those cells. The count, sum, average, and so on. You have to choose one of the available grouping function. So pivot table, as we see, is even more convenient than the table which I showed previously, because it allows us to basically decide what should be a column and what should be a table, what should be a row, what should be treated as a row. Now, those are the basics of Excel. Last thing which I would like to do is to get back to this table and to add conditional formatting. Now, for this purpose, I will get back to the Home tab and say sometimes we would like to differentiate different types of values in our report. In this case, I will select the doors column with all the values, and I will choose the conditional formatting option in the style section and choose, let's say, the icon set. And I will choose the first one, those arrows. Now, depending on the data formatting of our table, we can add different types of conditional formatting. In this case, we have a problem because the data format of our cell is not correct. So this is why we have a problem adding conditional formatting in here. Now, I will get back to the first example and I will try to add conditional formatting in here. I will select the price table, go to conditional formatting, icon set, and choose the first one. As we see now, conditional formatting icon set is using this kind of formatting as we see, and the highest values have this green arrow pointing upward, the medium one, this yellow arrow, and the lowest one, this red arrow. So if I will change this to something higher, what is nice is that this conditional formatting is also kind of working in both ways. So whenever I change something in here, the value gets a proper formatting which is according to the value within this cell, and this is dynamic. If I will maybe Ctrl Z and get back again before I added this formatting, I will go to conditional formatting and choose something different. I can choose a color scale which just gives me a very nice visual representation of the highest values which are showed in green and the lowest one which are showed in red. And also I can choose just something more typical, like let's say highlight cellulose greater than, and I can say that any value greater than, let's say 1500 has to be displayed with the light red filling. I will just click OK, and we see that now the values higher than 1500 are displayed in this way. So depending on what we would like to format, we can add this conditional formatting. We can also apply a few rules to the same column if we want to. Now, if I will go to conditional formatting one last time, we can also click New Rule and create our own rule if we want to. We don't have to depend on those which are created for us, and we don't have to always choose only the one available for us. Now, those are the basics. The basic options in Excel. What is especially important is using those functions and using cell address and cell expressions in Excel, because this is what is useful. And especially remember about copying, using this black square, copying the expression, and how we can work with the dollar sign, how those addresses are incremented. This is what allows us to do different types of analysis of data in Excel. As we saw, we can also connect the Excel, not only use it to import data from the CSV file, but also to get the data directly from the database. So this is something extremely useful in some cases. We can even connect it directly to data warehouse. So for now, those are just the basics. So please read those Word documents. There are a few more a few more things explain those documents. Make sure that more or less you remember those basic things. You may get a few questions during an exam about those this functionalities presented in Excel during our classes. But of course, most of the question will be about databases.